Brisbane Wakes Up with Stav, Abby and Matt on B105.
I've always made a conscious decision. I'm never going to live through my kids. You know, they've got their own life. However, when you are a sports mum or maybe it is a dance mum, it becomes your life because you're there so often. So I always said to my son, you know, he loves football, but I thought it was good for him to do a solo sport because he was blaming his teammates for losing.
Yeah.
So I thought, you know, get into another sport that you want. He said, I want to do tennis. This little 6-year-old said he wants to do tennis. And I took him for a lesson and he loved it. It was 30 minutes and I thought that was enough once a week. And then as he progressed and loved it so much, I realised how involved it is. 30 minutes one day a week is not enough for tennis. So then it started doing squads, then tournaments, then privates. And it just took up so much
Well, tournaments
time.
can be a whole day, can't
All
they?
day. I said he's never doing cricket because I don't want to be there all day. And then I was like, oh, my God, I'm here with a lunchbox giving him fuel throughout the day.
It's cricket on concrete.
Yeah. But I never really liked tennis. And I loved tennis because he loved tennis. And it was our thing. And we drive an hour to go to this tennis school. And it was just always our thing. We went to the Australian Open and I loved hanging out with him. And then he said to me this week that he wants to quit tennis. And I was like, what? And it was like, yeah, I want to quit tennis and it's your fault that you made me to do it. And I couldn't do AFL and I lost it. Like I was yelling at him in the car because I was like, what are you talking about? That's, you know, I haven't made you do tennis. And it wasn't a very nice conversation. And then he got out and he did tennis and I was watching him. And then I just got tears because I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I yelled at him. You know, I got those guilts and I was like, what am I doing? Like it's his life. And I felt like, am I pushing him to do tennis? And then I just thought about it, and the only thing I always know is to Google. And I've always said I love to watch you play because I learned that that was really good to do rather than, you know, put in the effort and go for it.
Better
I
win.
always say, And this lady popped up on Instagram and it was a story about her and she was so honest, talking about being a sports mum, and her daughter Piper loved water polo and she said that was her life. You know, she wanted to do Olympics, you know, she wanted to, you know, learn her skills or everything. So when Piper said that she didn't want to do water polo anymore, she was devastated because she was a great sports player growing up as well. And then she realised, well, it's not really about me, it's about them. And I was like, I wasn't listening to my son and he probably fell out of love with tennis earlier than what I thought.
I think that one of the things you've said there, though, is your attachment to it was not about you were trying to make him the next Australian Open winner.
Yeah.
It was your thing that you shared, just the two of you, and that can be like a breakup when you lose that because you're seeing that he now is growing up, and so he's
100%.
is that what it sort of was? Like
100%.
He was
So he
distancing?
came back in the car and I was like, can you sit like next to me? Need to talk? And I said, I'm really sorry. Do you really not want to do it anymore? And he said, I'm sorry, I don't want to. I said, you don't have to say sorry to me. I said, but I think you've got confused. I don't love tennis. I loved that you loved it. I loved that we could go to tournaments, we could go for dinner after. It was that forced time together because let's be honest, a teenager doesn't want to hang out with their parents.
No.
You know, but it was our time to share something, and I don't know what the future looks when we're not. And it sounds so pathetic for anyone that's like, oh, what are you talking about? You know, who's not a sports mum or a dance mum or anything like that. But for us, I said, I was supporting you because that's what you wanted to do. And if you don't want to do it anymore, that's fine. But it was kind of like a breakup where I didn't read the room. And I said, you know, and I explained all that to him. And I said, I loved having the conversations after you played sport about what you could have done different when you asked me. All those little learning curves, I guess, that the sport brought us. And I was crying and I had this like real deep and meaningful. I said, is there anything you want to say? And he said, I know you had an hour and a half to think about this, so I want to give you an 8 for delivery.
Brilliant.
For context, it was probably around about 7 because you used the word I a bit too much and we laughed. And I know that he was just using humour for it. But I was like, we just got to find something different to do together. And it's that whole growing up, which you've gone before.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to learn as well.
Yeah.
Especially when your child becomes an adult, because to you, they're always your child. So what I found with our 23-year-old is he doesn't live in my life anymore. If I want to have a relationship with him, I have to live in his life. So go where he is, what he wants to do, because he's got his own family. So I'm the outsider now.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if that makes
So I was watching at tennis and I wrote this email to this lady that wrote this beautiful article, and her name is Asia Mape, and she's from the States. And I was like, just because she was so honest with it about being a sports mum and just being over the top sometimes as well, you know, and I wrote to her and she wrote back to me and I was like in tears. And I was like, I feel like there's so much people can learn about being a sports parent. Like, how do we encourage our kids, but then not make it about results? And I think there's so many parents on the sideline and I see them, you know, screaming at them. I'm like, oh, mate, I know this is about what you could have been a footy star.
Yeah. Well, if you can't be the football star, you could be the parent of the football star, can't you?
But what happens when that kid stops wanting to do it?
Yeah, I know. And it's hard because you're coming from a good place. Your heart is in a good place.
I wanted him to do a sport where he's not getting bashed up on the footy field.
What a horrible mother.
Well, she's also a 4-time Emmy Award-winning journalist and a sports television producer, so she was deeply entrenched in it. She's got a great website called ilovetowatchyouplay.com. Asia, good morning.
Hi, good morning or good afternoon here in California.
No, it was so amazing to be able to read it and to, you know, what you were talking about with your daughter wanting to stop sports. And you've got 3 kids. So I think, you know, you say it's not about not being able to push for achievement. I shouldn't use the word push. It's not about having kids that don't achieve, but it's like, what can we do better, I guess, as sporting parents to encourage them, but not make it about us?
Yeah, and Abby, I already want to say, like, you're so much farther ahead than most of us, including myself back then, because you really were valuing the right things, you know, the time together and, you know, the process of it, and even, like, talking about the friends and family you'll miss and all of that stuff. That's all so normal. And I don't think, you don't sound to me anyways, like some of the parents that I work with and talk with a lot. So I just want to say I can hear the sadness in your eyes. And as I was listening, I was like starting to tear up because I definitely feel it. But I do think you need to give yourself some grace because I think it sounds like you've done a great job. And I do hear you that maybe like in a year earlier, and mine was probably more like 2 years earlier with Piper. So, you know, I think that all things considered, you've done a great job with it, but there definitely are things. And I'm still, you know, I have 2 daughters. One plays two that still play sports. One is playing soccer over here at Ohio State University, and the other one is committed for beach volleyball. And so I'm still in the thick of it and still making these mistakes. It is so hard because we do get so wrapped up into it. And we love it. And most of us, I think most parents want to do what's right. You know, we want to support them, as you guys are saying, and we want to, like, you know, elevate whatever it is that they're doing. But we do sort of there comes a point where we need to step back and have some hard conversations with them. And I loved, Abby, your description of your conversation afterward, and that you and your son could have a good laugh about it. And I mean, I smiled from ear to ear because a lot of parents will never even get to that point where you can have an honest conversation because the hurt and, you know, the expectations and the ROI, you want that return on investment. You put so much into it.
It's a big investment.
So bravo. Yes. Money, time, everything. So really give yourself some grace and a pat on the back because it sounds like you've done a lot of things right.
It was only because I read what you had gone through, so it was only a really quick learning curve for that.
Do you think it's a thing of because it's a definitive ending? Because these moments happen all the time and you don't even notice, like that old saying of one time you picked up your child for the last time and you didn't know. But these moments that you enjoy with your child pass by sometimes unawares, and like a year from now you'll go, oh, I remember when we used to do that.
Yeah.
But this has got a full stop on something that you used to do. I used to drive my daughter to bounce every Wednesday, and I loved the time in the car.
You used to complain about it, but really you loved it.
I loved it. But, you know, do you think it's that marker of this part of our lives together is definitely over?
Yeah, and that's the thing, too, right, for someone like Abby or myself, where it's not the natural ending, right, where it's not like they finished for here, it would be high school, which makes it that much more difficult because you can kind of plan and prepare for that.
Yeah.
But the truth is, I wrote that article and I called it quitting, but I really do hate that word because he's 14, your son, he's not a quitter. He's not quitting. He's finding out who he is and what he loves. And the next thing will be out there for him. Or he might come back to tennis. As I said to you in my email, I see that all the time, where they just need a break. There's nothing even grown-ups do. We don't even do our jobs as much as these kids are playing their youth sports, at least here in the States. I mean, even when they're on vacation, you're on vacation. Did you go for a run? Did you kick the ball around? It's like they just aren't getting any breaks. And so it is no wonder that so many kids drop out of sports.
And you talk about like what to say back in the car. And I think that really, I was like, yes, because it's not like you should ever go, hey, I saw you on the field, you weren't putting in enough effort, or you could have done this. What do you think is the right thing to say, I guess, for all the sporting parents, you know, when their kid's coming back in the car after a game this weekend?
Yeah, so that's a thing that everyone loves to talk about, that car ride home, right? And how many ways we do that wrong. It depends a little bit on their age, but in general, I think the most important thing is you don't say anything. If they want to talk about it, and you can ask them, do you want to talk about it? And I think if I had to make one point to you guys and to your listeners, it would really be that it's led by them and that it's listening and talking and having those conversations, and especially for a 14-year-old, ask them what they want. So, like, I made this mistake with my oldest, and for a while with my middle daughter, you know, I was always imparting all this wisdom. Here's this, I'm giving you this, sharing this. What do you want? Do you want help with that? Do you want me to look at film with you? Do you want me to remind you to go for that run that you said you were trying to do? It's a conversation, right? At a certain point, they're of that age where you can have those conversations. And typically, like my little one now will say, yes, please remind me, even if I get mad at you, just say you said you wanted to go for a run. But as far as that car ride home, it's the same thing. So think about that car ride home. First off, they played in the game, so they experienced it themselves. They've already gotten feedback from their coach. They've probably talked to their friend about it on the sideline. They've walked up to the car having discussed it, but they get into that car, and that becomes about us, right? Like, we now want to talk about it. And so some kids, look, every kid is different. Some kids will want to continue to rehash. But for the most part, have an enjoyable car ride home. And if they want to talk about it, or if you see that they're down and you say, hey, you know, what happened? Do you want to discuss it? Or maybe it's like, do you want to talk about it later? Whatever it is, just let them guide that period of time for whatever needs they want. And definitely don't, and I know this sounds terrible, but I see it all the time, don't do that, oh, we're not stopping for ice cream. Like, you can't be mad at your kid. And parents are getting upset with their kid for having a bad game and for losing. It is the same response, win or lose.
Playing devil's advocate, though, and I agree with everything that you're saying completely, when it comes to school and stuff, we quite often try and push our children into subjects that they're very good at. And we always say to them, you're so good at it and you've got great potential because it's academic, right? They may hate it, but we're trying to force our teenagers to choose subjects we know that they'll do really, really well in. What do you do if you do know that your child is naturally very good and has huge potential in this type of area, and you want to encourage them that this could be something that is good for them in the long run? Because, you know what kids are like. If you say to them, do you want to go and put a bit of work in here, or do you want to sit at home on the Xbox? They'll choose Xbox. So how do you walk that line?
100%. Yeah, that's such a great point. And it is really, really a difficult one. You know, I think you don't give them the Xbox as the option, right? It's like, either you can go for the run or you can help me clean. There's not an Xbox
Clever.
option. Not that they can't play Xbox when they have the downtime. And Abby, I know you mentioned in the email, like, you know, that is a fear of, like, so does it just become all about screens? And no, we're still their parents. And this isn't like, and to be great at anything, which is what we all want for them, no matter what that is, it takes hard work and it takes effort. And, you know, kids don't usually really gain those sort of muscles in that area to, like, push themselves. Some do. There's always those exceptions, but, like, until they're older. So there is a little bit of, like, pushing them along the way. But I think when it becomes you're pulling and pushing more than they wanted, and it's like an imbalance, that's when you really have to have those hard conversations. And you also see all the time that, like, it's just the wrong sport. So, for example, Piper, my water polo player, she, like, here in the States, we always start them in soccer, right? Because you can do that. It's a little less hand-eye coordination. It's not like you can start in volleyball or anything. They all start in soccer. And a lot of them stay, and they stay too long, and they think that's supposed to be their sport because, well, we put 5 years in, and we've been traveling and doing all these things. Well, Piper hated running. And at some point, I was screaming, run, so many times. I'm like, something is not working. And although she didn't see it through in water polo, it was such a better match for her being in the pool. Or my youngest daughter, JD, she's a volleyball player, and she started in soccer. She didn't like the aggressiveness. She didn't like, having to push on people and body on people. And when we moved her over to volleyball, it was such a better fit. And other kids, they find, robotics, or they find whatever. It's like, it's all about, as you said, Abby, not letting them just go onto the screens all day and all night, but finding what inspires them and interests them. And that takes trying. And that
Such
takes,
a great point.
Being willing to move things around and do different things.
Good on you. Asia, thank you so much for your time this morning. We can check out your website, I love to watch you play.com. Really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you.
Stab Abby and Matt for breakfast. B105.